Good morning, and happy Wotan's Day to you. I hope today is amazing and that you are gathering the energy at which you seek. For we all know the experiences of life is what provides us with that inner relationship that provides us with wisdom. Before we get started today and speaking about Wotan and Odin and their quest for wisdom, I want to give a huge thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed. For those of you who haven't just yet, please go ahead and click that button, like, follow, subscribe on whatever platform you happen to be following us on, for every little bit goes to help us distribute this message far and wide, whether it be the video aspects here on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and now even Kick. In addition, we also want to give a huge shout out to our friends and family at newrealitytv.com. New Reality TV is a streaming channel that provides a plethora of perspectives that can hopefully resonate with you and provide you with that piece of intellect you need to be successful in obtaining a better mental health. Whether it be the audio on Apple and Spotify and all of those others, you're welcome to like, follow, and subscribe us there as well. If you have a few extra coins, want to give to something that's super critical, that helps people, by all means, stop by our donation site there at pay.akoutlaw.com, and there you can add your donation, which every little bit helps, goes to providing this electronic platform as well as the in-person visits around the country. So please check that out. If you are interested about me, my message, my teachings, my shows, all of the information at one centralized location, including my life coaching service, which is available to anyone who may need that extra ear to listen, by all means, check out my website, norsewhispers.com/coaching, and there you can find out all kinds of information about me and certainly get a hold of me. For those of you interested in asking questions or making comments this morning, Facebook and YouTube live chats are available for you to do that. So, with all that said, let's talk about Wotan's Day today. Wotan, for those of you who may have not read all of the sagas and the travels of Wotan or the Allfather Odin, you may not know his whole understanding. And his whole understanding was, as he traveled around the world, the realms, he was gaining experiences, and those experiences would then give him the interrelativity between the intellect that he possessed to create a wisdom. And so that's really what wisdom is. It's a connectivity between experiences and intellect. And as a kind of a higher level, it actually provides relationships between the different intellect, the different imagery, and the different emotion within our minds that helps us to interrelate more quickly. So you could consider it kind of as this overview of knowledge and, of course, experience. Whenever speaking about the experiences of Wotan, or the Allfather, and how he was collecting wisdom, I'm always drawn to a story that my great-grandmother told me, and that was about Wotan and the Well of Urd. The Well of Urd, of course, being one of the three wells that held the roots of Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil, of course, being the center tree of all the realms, all the universe. These roots would deposit reflections of all the experiences of all the life forms. She would go on to tell me, I should say, that each of us living beings, whether we be physical forms, whether we be spiritual forms, whether we be deities, whether we be giants, whether we be elves, dwarves, you name it, all of us connected to Yggdrasil through our stem. Each of us being very alike to a leaf on a tree. As we exist in our formation as a leaf, we know that there's a center stem on a leaf, and that center stem connected back to a branch, which then connected to Yggdrasil. As we gain our experiences in this life and we experience the reality at which we live, that reality is fed into what we will call memories. Those memories are accessible when we're awake using our sorcery or our sensory input, brain, and our memories. So those are connected underneath our consciousness. Our consciousness then can recall things from memory, and it can interact with the sensory input, and it can do those kinds of things. Then when we fall asleep or we are unconscious for whatever reason, we can create an altered state of consciousness simply by daydreaming during the day. When we alter that state of consciousness, what we're essentially doing is we're moving this plate that has been over our physical brain, and we're going to kind of move it back a little bit. It may go to where it's, covering most of our memories. It may go all the way back to where it's actually touching on our spiritual mind. When it is, we begin to interchange experiences, memories. And so these memories are now going out to the spiritual realm. Remember, our spiritual self is connected to the spiritual realm all the time. And these memories then are fed through our stem into Yggdrasil, where it's just kind of ultimately winding up being reflected in these wells at the roots. Odin would trade an eye. He would give a physical eye that he may drink from the well of Erd. And this was a deal that he made with the Norse sisters. The Norse sisters, of course, being very similar to what the Greeks understood to be the Fates. The Norse sisters would take the eye and allow Odin to then drink from the well of Erd. Now, what was he drinking? Of course, that's the age-old question. Well, he was drinking our experiences. He was obtaining all the experiences of all the physical forms, the spiritual forms, the other deities. All of this, he was drinking from the well of Erd. Now, she would go on to say that following this event, Odin would sleep for 9 days and 9 nights, where he would process all of these experiences. He would kind of absorb them. And realistically, we know his brain was making all the connections to his intellect, right? So he had gained all this experience, and now it was building this interrelational table within the mind that he could then draw upon. Super cool when you think about our life. Now, in the modern day world of technology, we can, of course, see other people's lives. We see, in my case, when I watch TV, I'm typically watching documentaries and the similar type. So I'm seeing experiences of other people's lives. Those experiences are then going to be drawn into my brain using my sensory input, and I'm going to store them and build more interrelational tables within my mind that I can then draw upon at a later time. So I'm building my wisdom simply by living my life. Now, many people think that, or have told me that, well, wisdom is the experiences of nobles and these muckety-mucks, and that we don't really ever need it, right? We just live our lives, and wisdom will just magically occur. I'll find the guru on the mountaintop, and he will impart upon me this stack of wisdom. Well, I'm sorry to say that's not going to happen. The gurus on the mountains, unfortunately, unless they've lived a long physical life where they've interacted with all kinds of beings and all kinds of experiences, are going to have very little wisdom. Wisdom really does come from experience on this plane. Now, Having said that, you can also receive experiences from other planes as we speak about drawing experiences from our ancestors, from other spirits, and certainly from the deities into our own mind. Now, we can do this because all spirits are interacted. They're all connected into this large collective. So and that large collective, of course, as we just mentioned, is the tree Yggdrasil. So there's data flowing around through the tree. And we're able to absorb that just like anyone else. All we simply have to do is allow those energies to come into our being, and we can absorb those experiences the same way Othin did when he drank from the well of Erd. So you could think that, you could suppose that what Othin did by going to the well of Erd was simply fast forward a life, right? And so he is gaining more and more experiences in a fairly short time, which is why I think he needed the 9 days and 9 nights to kind of process it all. There's a lot to be said for emotional wisdom and wisdom. While being one and the same, many times the same type of interconnectivity is forming when we have emotional experiences. Now remember, emotions are going to alter the way we see reality. And we've talked about it where we may be in a grumpy mood when we wake up and we say, and we drive to work and everybody in traffic is just making us angrier and we're just grumpy, right? It alters the way you see the world because as you're driving to work, things that you see along the way, experiences that you have, are now grumpy. That guy just cut me off. That other person over there doesn't know how to drive. That person's driving too slow. That person's driving too fast. We're going to find everything wrong. We're going to see that because it's going to be highlighted in our mind's eye. Why? Because we've set the mood. We've set I call it the mood ring, but my ancestors refer to it as the emotional filter behind our sensory input. And this emotional filter then alters when your images, and we'll use vision as the first and foremost, but it happens on all the senses. When that vision comes into the eye literally can't take a picture and carry it to the next part of the brain. It can't do that. It needs to convert it to what is referred to within the body as bioelectricity. So it's going to take this image in through the eyes. It's going to convert the image to energy or to bioelectricity, where it's going to put it on the optic nerve of the eye. That's going to then transport this image. Well, that's up for a lot of interpretation. First thing we have is as the conversion process is happening from reality to this electronic or electricity, we have the potential of transient energy kind of floating through the universe. So we could be looking at something and a negative energy kind of cluster kind of wanders through and manipulates the converted energy. Then that converted energy then goes into our emotional filter. The emotional filter may alter, based on our mood, may alter that image even further. So now we've got kind of a couple of manipulations of this experience in reality already happened. Before we drop into what my ancestors referred to as the well of the self, and at the bottom of the well of the self was our intrinsic values, our virtues, our belief systems. Those rocks, remember? Those rocks And they're going to provide emotional energy as well. So some things that we see may kind of, using a psychological term here, may trigger us differently, right? So something may, within that image, may spark an emotional energy that is just there. It's part of who you are. And then all of that, now it's converted a third time, right? Converted a third time. And now it's going to go in and be converted to biochemistry. All right. So this is the job, my ancestors referred to it. This is the job of our heart and our emotional state. So emotional state, there's a bunch of things that happen with the emotional state. But suffice to say, when we convert this to biochemistry, floats up through the body, arrives back in the brain at what my ancestors referred to as the horn of feeling. The horn of feeling has its own thing, as it will convert the biochemistry back to the bioenergy, or the bioelectricity, to continue on with the thought process to ultimately wind up in our memories. All right, so this is kind of how it works, and there's a bunch of places along this path, if you will, where we can have transient energy or self-made energy manipulate that energy, or that biochemistry that's happening can be altered. As an example, if you were to have an experience, we'll say buying a loaf of bread. That's it's actually a fairly large series of experiences. But we buy a loaf of bread and everything is good and normal. We're feeling okay. Life is good. We're in a good place today. And we buy this loaf of bread. We have an experience, and our mood probably is, here, there, anywhere. And we don't have a whole lot of manipulation going on. It's just fairly straightforward. You may not have any hidden values or virtues or even belief systems about buying this loaf of bread, other than probably a cost, right? That may be kind of that oddball that kind of invokes a little bit more energy for the emotional part of it, and then processes it and goes through. But think about buying the same loaf of bread now with a different alteration, and in this case we're going to use alcohol. And in our example, we've had a few glasses of wine or mead or whiskey or whatever it is you drink, and we're going to go buy the same loaf of bread. Now, everything else being the same, the only difference now at the moment is the idea that we've had alcohol in the bloodstream. Now, alcohol does have an effect on the mental processing because it alters the signaling between the nerves and the brain. So this process that we just described, filter, well of self, up to horn of feeling, through the me gate and into memories, is now altered all along the way as the nerves are having to generate or move this signal across the nerve cell using different energies. Probably one would be your diet, one would be hope, one would be just the emotional state that you're in. These energies are going to move the signals along the nerves between what we see and what we remember. And the alcohol now has its own effect on the transmission of that data. This is why many people may have one too many drinks, and they may black out some things. Why? Because the alcohol now is preventing the signaling between the eyes and the brain, or memories, I should say. More importantly, is that we're not going to remember. So we have what is commonly referred to as a blackout. This is simply your brain, that signal coming across the nerves, not making it. It never makes it to memory. goes off into nowhere. That's an experience. All experiences do not have to be shades of pink with rainbows and unicorns. There are many experiences in this life that we need to have that may not be wanted, may not be joyful and loving, right? Self-reveal for those of you who are new to the show. I overdosed on heroin back in the 80s. And that probably was not my best experience. It kind of concluded for me about a decade of horrible life choices. Those choices I had to have to get me to the place where I recognized the value of my shield maiden. Now, I would meet my shield maiden. I would meet and marry my shield maiden 8 months, almost to the day, from sobering, from becoming clean, from cleaning up from heroin, following the overdose. And I would meet her, but I would not have met her, nor would I have found value in her had I not gone through that experiences that I'd have. I'd have been off on some other tangent, right? So each event, each experience that we have sets up the next experience. And even though those experiences may not be wanted, they're necessary, all right? So sometimes we have to go through the rain clouds to get to the flowers that bloom in April. So when we're talking about these experiences that were being stored, and we're talking about building the inner relationship between that memory and other memories all around the brain, we're building this matrix, if you will, of interactivity between all of these different knowledge and intellect stacks. We really are building wisdom, but we're not building wisdom just for us here, now. Granted, we can use it here, now, but that's not the only value. The real value is, remember, when we become unconscious, that consciousness is simply sliding back. We're getting an altered state of consciousness. So we fall asleep, consciousness falls back, and now we have direct connection between our spiritual self and those memories, those experiences that we've had. Now, when those experiences in memory are connected to our spiritual self, they're funneled out into the spiritual realm. So essentially, by us having the experiences that we have, our interpretation of the experience, we're teaching the spiritual realm what this experience looks like through our eyes. So it's a very important part of our experience in this physical reality is simply to provide a different perspective for our experiences. Again, not just for us here now in the physical plane, but for us and others in the spiritual realm. So all of that is, consider it lessons, if you will, going forward. My friends, today we're embracing wisdom. And wisdom, again, is the combination between intellect and experiences. So I encourage us all to enjoy and experience this life. We are so blessed, if you will, to enjoy a life of emotional connectivity, of emotional understanding, and certainly the reality at which we interact with. It's super important that we just allow ourselves to embrace all of the emotional states that we wind up traveling through. We simply have to understand that it's a temporary state. So when we feel a little overwhelmed, the best thing to be when we're overwhelmed is just to be still. Allow those energies within the mind to just kind of settle down. maybe using some intrinsic reflection, looking intrinsically so that we can just kind of clear out that stress, learn from the event that drove that energy, and grow. That's really the idea of building wisdom. And Odin, in the Norse legends, certainly embraced this journey. Constantly, see him referred to as the traveler, where he's moving around the realms, dressed in an old floppy hat and robes that kind of made him almost invisible, if you will. He just kind of moved through. So that quest to learn, to grow, to experience the reality that he was in is really what drove him and should drive us every day. We should just embrace all of the experiences and understand there are going to be experiences that we have in a day that may or may not be pleasant, but they're all part of our growth, and we're learning and growing and hopefully kind of altering our trajectory a little bit, getting to that place. So today being Wotan's Day, Maeve, I hope I'm saying that right, Maeve. I am wonderful, and I hope you are too. Maeve joins us from Kick, so one of our new platforms. Thank you for joining us this morning. For the rest of you, I look forward to seeing you this evening. Remember, tonight, Sporks Mall, Wednesday night, 6:30 Alaska time. And tonight, we'll be talking more about these values and these virtues located in these rocks at the bottom of the well of the self. I really want to dive down deep into this to help us to all understand that we're in charge. We get to make decisions about what we think and how we feel. Just because we were depressed a moment ago doesn't mean we have to carry it forward. It doesn't mean that it has to be a life sentence. It's simply an experience, a momentary frame that we can change from, we can grow from, we can understand and seek bigger and wider things. So don't think that just because you feel a certain way right this minute that you have to stay feeling that way. There's no a rule that says how long things can last, right? So you can change, and you can, if you will, you can direct your emotional path, your emotional growth. That's the beautiful thing about this reality, is that you get to be in charge of your mind, your heart. You get to drive. So don't let anyone ever says, you make me feel this way. No, I don't. You make you feel that way. I simply provide information. How you react to it is your thing. So remember that. All right. I will see you this very evening, 6:30 Alaska time for Sporks Mall, where, again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the well of the self. So I hope you will join me for that. In the meantime, I wish you the very best Wotan's Day, and I hope that you will embrace this path that you're on, this journey of learning and loving and growing. Because remember, it's not only for you now, but it's for you in the spiritual realm, as well as the other spirits that inhabit that realm. So enjoy. In the meantime, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Wotan's Day, and we will see you this evening for Sporks Mall. Love and light, my friends.
Watching Fulfillina's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Ulfhefnar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.